The date is April 27, 2007. A quiet afternoon in Italy, where most people are going about their daily lives, completely unaware that the internet is about to explode with one of the most controversial revelations in space exploration history. On YouTube, a channel called RetiredAF, short for Retired Air Force Base, uploads a series of grainy videos. The footage is shaky, clearly aged, and appears to have been filmed off a screen. But what it shows is absolutely extraordinary. The video claims to be authentic footage from Apollo 20, a secret NASA mission that officially never happened. In the footage, we see the interior of a spacecraft, astronauts speaking in hushed tones, and then something impossible. The camera pans across the lunar surface, revealing what appears to be an enormous cigar-shaped object, partially buried in the moon's ancient dust. It's massive, nearly 2 miles long according to the alleged mission parameters, with unmistakable geometric features that nature simply doesn't create. But that's not even the most shocking part. As the camera continues, we see astronauts entering what appears to be an ancient derelict spacecraft. The interior is dark, covered in a fine layer of lunar dust that hasn't been disturbed in millions of years. And then, the camera focuses on something that makes your blood run cold. A humanoid figure, seated in what appears to be a pilot's chair. The face is remarkably preserved, with high cheekbones, a delicate bone structure, and what looks like some kind of technological apparatus connected to the head. The astronaut's gloved hand reaches out, gently brushing dust away from the figure's face. The woman, because the body is clearly female, has been there for an incomprehensible amount of time. Yet somehow, impossibly, she looks almost alive. The video ends with a simple statement: "I am William Rutledge, former astronaut of Apollo 20. What you have seen is real. We were not the first to reach the moon. We were just the first to come back and tell the truth." The internet went absolutely insane. Millions of views, thousands of debates. Scientists, conspiracy theorists, space enthusiasts, and skeptics all descended into a furious argument about the authenticity of what they'd just witnessed. Could this be real? Did NASA really conduct 3 additional secret Apollo missions after publicly ending the program? And most terrifyingly, did they really find evidence of ancient alien technology on the moon? Welcome to the truth. Or at least, welcome to one of the most compelling mysteries in modern space exploration history. Today we're going to dive deep into the story of Apollo 20. We'll examine the evidence, interview accounts from alleged participants, look at the historical context, and try to determine whether this is the greatest cover-up in human history, or the most elaborate hoax ever created. Because if even 1% of this story is true, everything we know about human history, our place in the universe, and the nature of space exploration will have to be completely rewritten. Are you ready? Let's begin. To understand the Apollo 20 mystery, we need to go back to the 1970s. The space race between the United States and the Soviet Union had been the defining technological competition of the Cold War. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Whoever controlled space would have both military superiority and the ultimate propaganda victory. NASA's Apollo program was the crown jewel of American space exploration. Between 1969 and 1972, 6 successful missions landed 12 astronauts on the lunar surface. These missions were Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Each mission pushed the boundaries of what was possible, collecting rock samples, conducting experiments, and capturing images that would define a generation. But here's where things get interesting. Originally, NASA had planned for 10 lunar landing missions, Apollo 11 through Apollo 20. However, in January 1970, everything changed. NASA announced the cancellation of Apollo 18, 19, and 20 due to budget cuts and shifting priorities. The official story was simple. The missions were too expensive, public interest was waning, and the scientific returns were diminishing. Apollo 17, which launched in December 1972, would be humanity's last visit to the Moon. Or would it? According to the Apollo 20 conspiracy theory, the cancellation was only partial. While Apollo 18 and 19 were genuinely scrapped, Apollo 20 continued in absolute secrecy. But why? What could possibly justify keeping a moon mission secret from the entire world? The answer allegedly lies in photographs taken during earlier Apollo missions, specifically Apollo 15 in 1971. As the command module orbited the Moon, its cameras captured thousands of images of the lunar surface, mapping and documenting regions that humans had never seen before. Among these photographs were images of the Delporte-Izsak region on the far side of the Moon, the side that perpetually faces away from Earth. In these images, eagle-eyed analysts spotted something extraordinary. There, clearly visible in multiple photographs, was what appeared to be a massive elongated structure, partially embedded in the lunar surface. It wasn't just a rock formation or a crater. The object had defined edges, geometric features, and what looked like structural components. Some analysts described it as resembling a cigar-shaped spacecraft, similar to descriptions from various UFO encounters throughout history. Even more intriguingly, nearby in the same region, there appeared to be another anomaly, what some described as a triangular or pyramidal structure, clearly artificial in appearance. Now you have to understand the context. This was the height of the Cold War. The space agencies of both superpowers had sophisticated imaging equipment and teams of analysts examining every square inch of lunar photograph. If something truly anomalous had been discovered, both the Americans and the Soviets would have known about it. And this is where the story takes its most fascinating turn. According to conspiracy theorists and alleged insiders, NASA and the Soviet space program did something unprecedented. They secretly agreed to collaborate on a joint mission to investigate these anomalies. Think about that for a moment. Two nations that were ideological enemies, locked in a global struggle for supremacy, suddenly working together on the most important discovery in human history. Why would they do this? The theory suggests several reasons. First, the discovery was so significant that it transcended national interest. If there was truly evidence of extraterrestrial technology on the Moon, it would change everything for all of humanity. Second, both nations realized that they needed each other. The Soviets had technology and expertise in certain areas, while NASA had already proven successful at lunar landings. Together, they could mount a mission that neither could accomplish alone. Third, and perhaps most cynically, both governments wanted to control the narrative. If this information got out prematurely, it could cause global panic and destabilize societies. Better to investigate quietly, confirm what they'd found, and then decide how or if to tell the world. The alleged mission was scheduled for August 1976. By this time, the Apollo program had officially ended. The Saturn V rockets that had carried humans to the Moon were supposedly all accounted for, either launched, destroyed, or displayed in museums. The astronauts had moved on to other projects. The world had moved on. But had they really? According to William Rutledge, the man who uploaded those explosive videos in 2007, the Apollo 20 crew consisted of 3 members. Rutledge himself was the commander, a veteran astronaut who had supposedly served in the Air Force and had previous spaceflight experience that was never publicly disclosed. The lunar module pilot was Leona Snyder, one of NASA's female astronauts whose existence has never been officially confirmed by the space agency. And the command module pilot was Alexei Leonov, the legendary Soviet cosmonaut who, in real documented history, was the first human to conduct a spacewalk back in 1965. Now, this is where we need to pause and examine what we know versus what we're told. Alexei Leonov was absolutely a real person. He's one of the most celebrated figures in space exploration history, and he lived until 2019, passing away at the age of 85. During his lifetime, he was asked multiple times about Apollo 20, and his responses were complicated. In some interviews, Leonov categorically denied any involvement in a secret mission. He stated clearly that while there were discussions between the US and Soviet Union about possible joint missions, nothing like Apollo 20 ever happened. However, in other conversations, people close to Leonov reported that he would smile knowingly when the topic came up, or make cryptic comments about things that must remain secret. Was he protecting classified information? Or was he simply amused by an outlandish conspiracy theory? As for William Rutledge, his identity is much more mysterious. There is no record of any NASA astronaut by that name in official databases. No military service records have been found. No photographs from the Apollo era show anyone matching his description. It's as if he never existed at all. Unless, of course, his entire identity was classified and scrubbed from public record. And Leona Snyder? Same situation. No records. No photographs. No evidence she ever worked for NASA. Yet Rutledge insists she was real, that she was brilliant, and that she played a crucial role in the mission. According to Rutledge's account, the mission launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, not Cape Canaveral in Florida. This is significant because Vandenberg was, and still is, primarily used for military launches and classified operations. The base has the infrastructure to support large rockets, and crucially, it's located in a position where launches could potentially avoid public observation. The rocket allegedly used was one of the remaining Saturn V rockets, supposedly assigned to the Skylab program but secretly repurposed for this clandestine mission. Again, the official records show that all Saturn V rockets are accounted for, but conspiracy theorists argue that it's entirely possible one was kept in reserve for exactly this kind of emergency situation. The mission profile was similar to previous Apollo flights. The crew would travel to the Moon, enter orbit, and then Rutledge and Snyder would descend to the surface in the lunar module while Leonov remained in the command module. But unlike previous missions that landed in relatively accessible and safe locations, Apollo 20 was headed for the far side of the Moon, one of the most challenging and dangerous landing sites imaginable. The far side of the Moon is a mysterious place. Because of tidal locking, this hemisphere never faces Earth. It's heavily cratered, mountainous, and until the space age, humans had never seen it at all. Communication with a spacecraft on the far side is impossible without relay satellites, and navigation is extremely difficult because you can't use Earth as a reference point. It's the perfect place to hide something, or the perfect place to investigate something that's been hidden for millions of years. According to Rutledge, the descent to the surface was harrowing. The landing site was in rough terrain, surrounded by boulders and crater walls. The lunar module touched down less than half a kilometer from the target, the massive cigar-shaped object that had been photographed 5 years earlier. As Rutledge and Snyder exited the lunar module and took their first steps toward the anomaly, they must have felt a mixture of excitement, fear, and awe that no words could adequately describe. They were about to become the first humans to make contact with evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. What they found there would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Imagine standing on the surface of the Moon, your boots crunching in the ancient lunar regolith that hasn't been disturbed for billions of years. Before you, stretching across your field of vision, is an object so large and so impossible that your brain struggles to process what your eyes are seeing. The spacecraft, and it was unmistakably a spacecraft, was approximately 3 kilometers long according to Rutledge's estimate. That's nearly 2 miles. To put that in perspective, the largest aircraft carrier ever built on Earth is just over 340 meters long. This thing was almost 10 times larger. It was cylindrical in shape, with a diameter of about 500 meters, and appeared to be constructed from some kind of metallic alloy that had withstood millions of years of exposure to radiation, micrometeorite impacts, and the extreme temperature variations of the lunar environment. The craft was partially buried in the lunar surface, suggesting it had either crashed there in the distant past or had been intentionally landed and then gradually covered by the slow accumulation of lunar dust and debris. One end appeared to be severely damaged, with structural members exposed and sections that had been torn away, possibly during the impact or landing. But the other end appeared to be relatively intact. As Rutledge and Snyder approached the craft, they could see intricate details that became more astounding the closer they got. There were what appeared to be panels or plates covering the hull, each one precisely fitted to its neighbors. There were formations that could have been sensor arrays or communication equipment. There were openings that might have been windows, hatches, or exhaust ports. And most significantly, there was an opening large enough for 2 astronauts in bulky spacesuits to enter. The decision to go inside must have been one of the most difficult moments of their lives. This was completely unprecedented. There were no protocols for this situation, no training, no safety guidelines. They had no idea what they might find inside: hostile aliens, dangerous technology, biological hazards, or simply an empty tomb. But they hadn't come this far to turn back. According to Rutledge's account, the interior of the craft was like stepping into a museum of an alien civilization. The main corridor they entered was massive, high ceilings, wide enough to accommodate beings much larger than humans. The walls were covered in what appeared to be writing or symbols, completely unlike any human language. Some areas showed signs of damage: torn metal, collapsed sections, evidence of whatever catastrophe had brought this vessel to the moon. As they moved deeper into the craft, using powerful flashlights to illuminate the darkness, they entered what appeared to be a control room or bridge. And there, in what could only be described as pilot seats, were 2 figures. The first was in an advanced state of decay, barely more than a skeleton with some desiccated tissue remaining. But the second was remarkably preserved. Rutledge described her, and the body was clearly female, as humanoid but distinctly not human. She was tall, perhaps 7 feet if she had been standing. Her skull was elongated, with a high forehead and large orbital cavities where her eyes would have been. Her skin, though dried and mummified, had a grayish-blue tint. She was wearing some kind of fitted suit or uniform that appeared to be partially integrated with her body, and there were cables or tubes connected to her head, possibly some kind of neural interface with the ship's systems. But the most extraordinary thing was her face. Despite being dead for what could be millions of years, her facial features were peaceful, almost serene. Snyder later allegedly commented that she looked like she had simply fallen asleep at her post, waiting through eternity for someone to find her. The astronauts carefully documented everything with cameras and sample collection equipment. They removed some of the artifacts they found, small devices whose purpose they couldn't begin to understand, samples of the writing, and most controversially, they removed the female pilot's body to bring back to Earth. This decision has been one of the most hotly debated aspects of the entire Apollo 20 story. If this account is true, was it ethical to remove the remains? Were they essentially grave robbers, disturbing the final resting place of a being who had traveled across the stars? Or was it justified in the name of scientific discovery and understanding? Rutledge defended the decision in his interviews. He argued that this being, this pilot from an advanced civilization, would have wanted her story told. She would have wanted her existence to be known, to prove that life exists beyond Earth, and to potentially share knowledge with whatever intelligent species eventually found her. They placed her body in a specially designed containment unit that had been brought for exactly this purpose, carefully transporting her back to the lunar module. As they took one last look at the ancient spacecraft before leaving, Rutledge claims he felt an overwhelming sense of sadness. This vessel represented an entire civilization. It had traveled across unimaginable distances. The beings who created it had possessed technology that humans could barely comprehend. And now it lay forgotten and alone on the far side of the moon, a tomb of knowledge that might never be fully understood. The ascent from the lunar surface was successful, and the crew rejoined Leonov in the command module. The return trip to Earth took several days, during which the crew must have been processing the magnitude of what they had discovered. They had proof, absolute, undeniable proof, that humanity was not alone in the universe, that intelligent life had not only existed elsewhere but had visited our solar system, possibly millions or even billions of years ago. Upon returning to Earth, the crew was allegedly taken to a secret facility where they were extensively debriefed. The artifacts and the pilot's body were transferred to classified research laboratories, and then everyone involved was sworn to absolute secrecy under penalties that would destroy their lives and their families if violated. For 30 years, William Rutledge kept that secret, until 2007, when he decided the world needed to know the truth. So, let's examine the evidence. What do we actually have to support the Apollo 20 story? First, there are the videos that Rutledge uploaded to YouTube. These videos show what appears to be authentic Apollo-era footage of a lunar mission. The equipment looks right. The control panels, the spacesuits, the lunar module interior all match what we know from documented Apollo missions. The quality of the footage is consistent with 1970s technology, and the details are remarkably specific, including technical conversations between crew members that use authentic NASA jargon and procedures. The videos show the cigar-shaped craft on the lunar surface, the interior exploration, and most famously, close-up footage of the female pilot's face, which conspiracy theorists have nicknamed Mona Lisa because of her enigmatic expression. Second, there are the original Apollo 15 photographs that allegedly show the anomalies. These are real photographs from a real mission. They're available in NASA's archives. And while NASA has explained the formations as natural lunar features, shadows, and optical illusions, many independent researchers claim the explanations don't adequately account for what's visible in the images. Third, there's circumstantial historical evidence. During the 1970s, there were indeed secret discussions between NASA and the Soviet space program about possible cooperation. The Apollo-Soyuz test project in 1975 proved that joint missions were possible. There were Saturn V rockets that could potentially have been diverted to classified projects. Vandenberg Air Force Base did have the capability to launch such missions. And there are gaps in the historical record, missing documents, redacted files, and curious inconsistencies in the official timeline of space exploration during that period. Fourth, we have the testimony of William Rutledge himself. In video interviews conducted after 2007, he appears to be an elderly man with detailed knowledge of space technology, mission procedures, and classified operations. His stories are consistent across multiple interviews. He uses technical language correctly. And most intriguingly, he has never tried to profit from his revelations. No book deals, no paid appearances, no merchandise. He simply wanted the story told before he died. But here's where we run into serious problems. The skeptics, and there are many, point out numerous red flags that suggest the entire Apollo 20 story is an elaborate hoax. First, the identity issue. No William Rutledge appears in any NASA record. No Leona Snyder exists in any database. While Alexei Leonov was real, he denied involvement, and there's no evidence he ever traveled to the United States for joint mission training. Second, technical experts who have analyzed the videos claim they show signs of digital manipulation. Some elements appear to have been created using CGI. The camera angles are sometimes inconsistent with what would be possible in the confined space of a lunar module. And some of the alien technology shown in the footage looks suspiciously similar to props from science fiction movies. Third, the physics don't quite add up. Launching a Saturn V from Vandenberg would be extraordinarily difficult and would almost certainly have been detected by Soviet satellites and spy networks. Keeping such a massive operation secret from the thousands of people involved in Apollo support operations seems virtually impossible. And the idea that both the US and Soviet governments could maintain absolute secrecy about such a profound discovery for decades strains credibility. Fourth, there are inconsistencies in Rutledge's story itself. In some interviews, he claims certain things that contradict statements from other interviews. Details change. Timelines shift. When pressed on specific technical questions, his answers sometimes become vague or evasive. And yet, there are aspects of this story that are genuinely difficult to explain away. The quality of some of the footage is remarkably high for a hoax. The technical details sometimes include information that wasn't widely known until recently. And the motivations behind the hoax, if it is a hoax, are unclear since Rutledge never profited from it. Some researchers have proposed a middle ground theory. They suggest that while Apollo 20 itself may not have happened exactly as described, there might be kernels of truth in the story. Perhaps NASA did discover anomalous features on the Moon. Perhaps there were classified discussions about investigating them. Perhaps some kind of secret mission or missions were conducted, though not necessarily in the way Rutledge describes. The truth is, we may never know for certain. NASA has repeatedly and unequivocally denied the existence of Apollo 20. They state that all Saturn V rockets are accounted for. They claim that no joint US-Soviet lunar mission ever took place. They assert that the photographs showing alleged anomalies simply show natural lunar features that have been misinterpreted. But NASA's denials don't satisfy everyone. Critics point out that NASA has a long history of classifying information, redacting documents, and withholding data for national security reasons. If there truly was a discovery of alien technology, NASA would be expected to deny it regardless of the truth. The debate continues to rage in online forums, in documentaries, and in the minds of millions of people around the world who are desperate to know, are we alone in the universe? As I sit here, finishing this investigation into one of the most controversial stories in space exploration history, I find myself torn between skepticism and wonder. The rational, evidence-based part of my mind looks at the Apollo 20 story and sees numerous problems. The lack of official records, the anonymous sources, the convenient explanations for why evidence can't be independently verified, the technical inconsistencies. All of these suggest that this is, at best, a story based on misunderstood facts and, at worst, a deliberate fabrication. But another part of me, the part that looks up at the night sky and contemplates the vastness of the cosmos, can't help but feel that there's something more to this story. Because the fundamental question that Apollo 20 raises is not really about whether one specific secret mission happened. It's about something much bigger. If life exists elsewhere in the universe, and statistical probability suggests it almost certainly does, then what evidence of that life might be scattered across our solar system? Ancient probes sent by civilizations long dead. Crashed spacecraft from explorers who ventured too far from home. Archaeological remnants of visitors who came to our cosmic neighborhood millions of years before humans evolved. We assume that if aliens visited Earth or our moon, it would have been recently within human history. But what if they came billions of years ago, when Earth was still a ball of molten rock? What if they established outposts in our solar system during the age of the dinosaurs? What if the moon, with its ancient surface preserved in airless timelessness, holds evidence of visitations that we're only beginning to have the technology to detect? The far side of the moon is a place of mystery. We've barely scratched the surface of exploring it. With modern high-resolution satellites, we can see features on the lunar surface in incredible detail, but interpretation is subjective. Natural formations can look artificial under certain lighting conditions. Shadows can create illusions. Pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns and familiar shapes in random data, can turn an ordinary rock into a spaceship. But what if, just what if, somewhere in that unexplored wilderness there really is something waiting to be found? William Rutledge, if he's still alive, would be in his 80s or 90s now. The videos he uploaded stopped appearing in 2007, and he vanished from public view. Some say he died. Others claim he was silenced. Still others believe he accomplished what he set out to do. He planted seeds of curiosity and questioning that continue to grow. Alexei Leonov passed away in 2019, taking whatever secrets he might have known to his grave. His legacy as a genuine space hero is secure, regardless of whether he had any connection to Apollo 20. As for the truth remains elusive. But here's what I believe. Whether or not Apollo 20 happened as described, the story serves a valuable purpose. It reminds us that there are still mysteries in our universe. It encourages us to question official narratives and think critically about what we're told. It inspires us to keep exploring, to keep searching, to keep looking up at the stars with wonder and curiosity. The moon is still there, orbiting our planet every 27 days, keeping its far side forever hidden from casual observation. Modern space programs from multiple nations are planning to return to the lunar surface in the coming years. China, India, the United States, and private companies are all developing missions. Some of these missions will explore the far side of the moon in detail. Perhaps they'll find something. Perhaps they won't. But the search itself is valuable. Because ultimately, the question isn't just, did Apollo 20 happen? The real question is, what else don't we know? What other stories remain hidden in classified files? What other discoveries have been made and then buried? What other mysteries are waiting in the darkness of space for brave explorers to uncover? I don't know if William Rutledge was telling the truth. I don't know if there's an ancient alien spacecraft buried in the lunar regolith. I don't know if somewhere in a secret facility, scientists are studying artifacts from a civilization that died before humanity was born. But I know this: the universe is vast beyond human comprehension. It contains billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars, many with their own planet. The probability that we're the only intelligent life in all of that cosmic immensity is functionally zero. And if we're not alone, then somewhere out there, or perhaps right here, closer than we think, there's evidence waiting to be found. Maybe that evidence is on Mars, buried under the red sand. Maybe it's in the asteroid belt, floating among the rocky remnants of our solar system's formation. Maybe it's in the oceans of Europa or the methane lakes of Titan. Or maybe, just maybe, it's on the far side of the moon, right where William Rutledge said it was, waiting for the next generation of explorers to find it and finally tell the world what's been hidden for so long. Until that day comes, the mystery of Apollo 20 will continue to fascinate, frustrate, and inspire us. It will continue to spark debates, fuel imagination, and remind us that the greatest discoveries might not be in distant galaxies but right here in our own cosmic backyard. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of space exploration's most enduring mysteries. Whether you believe the story or dismiss it as fiction, I hope it's inspired you to keep questioning, keep wondering, and keep looking up at the stars. Because somewhere up there, among the countless worlds and endless void, answers are waiting. And perhaps, one day, we'll finally find them. The truth is out there. And maybe, just maybe, it's closer than we ever imagined.